It's not around for Halloween. It's gone by then. If you want one for Halloween night, you better get it now.
Yeah, or Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Coming to you from the Beer to Whiskey Studios on the taproom floor of the Greenville Beer Exchange, or GBX as we sometimes call it, on Lawrence Street in glorious downtown Greenville, South Carolina. I'm Russ Heaps, and welcome to this episode of Big John in 5. And that's because the namesake of this playlist, Big John Richards, picks a beer out of one of their 22 taps or hundreds of cans and bottles that are in the retail store up front. And we sniff, sip, kibitz. John tells us a little bit about the brewery. Sometimes we get some brewing history. And John, I'm tired of hearing myself talk. What are we doing?
Well, we are doing a fun little hybridy thing, I think, from Southern Tier called Warlock. Southern Tier Brewing is up in Lakewood, New York, in Finger Lakes region of New York, which is wine country, but the southern edge of the Finger Lakes is referred to as the Southern Tier. And so they're Southern Tier Brewery. It took me some digging to really uncover that some years ago when they first came down here, but really neat brewery. They do some really, really good stuff, from IPAs through stouts into the beer they're probably most famous for, which is Pumking. And that's a big imperial pumpkin beer that is one of the, but probably straight up the most sought after pumpkin beer in the country. And it's real good. It's the one that everyone, it's the one that everybody talks about tastes like pumpkin pie. That's the one that's got, you can taste the graham cracker, you can taste the vanilla, you can taste all the spices, and it's a pastry of a beer.
And in fact, we're shooting this about mid-September. We're shooting this series of episodes. And I know here in South Carolina, if you don't buy Pumking by the end of this month, you're not going to find it on the shelves, usually.
Yep. It's not around for Halloween. It's gone by then. If you want one for Halloween night, you better get it now.
Yeah, or Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
However, Publix, which is a grocery store chain that's here in the South and the Midwest, I think. For some reason, they got a ton of it, and so they had it pretty much throughout the winter last year.
Southern Tier has grown so much over the last several years in capacity. I think their website said they're in like 30 states now, and that's part of the Artisanal Brewing Ventures group. It's Victory and Southern Tier. In fact, originally it was just Victory and Southern Tier. And it was kind of, at the time, it was hilarious to all of us. And we were all gung-ho and excited because Victory went from 100,000 barrels of capacity. As soon as they announced the venture, they announced they were building a new production brewery with its own 300,000 barrel capacity. So they quadrupled in size. Southern Tier pretty much did the same thing. And now, we used to really have to fight for your Pumking, and now you can get it.
Yeah.
You can get it.
Yeah.
But this beer, they started a few years back, and it is. I didn't do enough digging. Maybe I could do enough digging to figure this out, but my understanding of this beer is that it is a blend of Pumking and one of their Blackwater Imperial stouts. I kind of always thought that it was a blend of Pumking and creme brulee, but having tasted it this year in particular, it popped up, and I went and tasted, and I was like, "Whoa, that is really." There's a lot of cocoa, roasty coffee bitterness in there that's just not present in creme brulee. So creme brulee tastes just like what it sounds like. And this beer has some roast in it. Creme Brulee does not. So it's got to be a blend of one of the others of their big Blackwater stouts. And they kind of got rid of a couple of those that I used to like and started brewing new ones because that's the way of the world.
Just because.
Just because. But this is a neat beer, and I don't think anybody else that I know of is doing a pumpkin imperial stout. And
So it's kind of, it's a hybrid if you want to be kind, and
Yeah.
if you want to be pejorative, it's a mutt.
right. But we all love mutts.
We do love mutts.
We're all mutts here in this country anyway.
That's right.
So
That's right.
let's do it.
Let's give it a go.
Let's give it a whirl.
Text Miss Lily.
Kaboom. Yeah, see, this one, pouring this one, all I smell is the pumpkin right up front. That's all I smell is the pumpkin. I just can't even get past it to the stout on the nose. At least not on that first dip in.
I'm not getting enough off the nose to even. I couldn't even identify.
Well, and you're gonna get that. The more that we get down, there's no headspace in this, so the more you get down, the more it'll trap some of those aromas in there.
It's a little cold too. For
Yeah, and it's a little cold. But yeah, as soon as I sip it, I get all that roast. There's a bunch of baker's chocolate, unsweetened chocolate bitterness on the back of that.
That's what I'm getting more so than pumpkin out of this.
Yeah, the on my tongue, it's all chocolate and roast and baker's chocolate and bitterness.
Yeah.
But on the nose, it smells like pumpkin. It's weird. Let's face it, this beer is weird, but that doesn't make it bad. It's just different, and I don't. There's probably a reason why hardly anybody makes a pumpkin imperial stout. Probably because it's really freaking hard.
Yeah.
And
it might just be difficult when you do that to hold the pumpkin flavor.
Right. To create any kind of
together.
balance.
Yeah.
Right. But this is a well balanced beer. This drinks really nice. I don't remember how many years ago this beer came out, and I feel like it could have been a decade ago. But when this thing first came out, I remember going, "Oh man, I think this is going to be my favorite beer." It is not. It has proven to not be my favorite beer, but I come back to it every year. I find one and I drink one of these every year. But I typically only drink one. That's probably fine.
It's addictive.
Well, yeah, the more you sip it, the more you want to sip it.
Yeah,
that's part of the magic.
It's addictive, and I'm getting on the finish of it, I'm getting the roast.
Yeah.
I'm getting a lot of roasted flavor, but I'm getting something else that is kind of sweet. And I don't know whether it's caramel or it's toffee, or I don't know what it is, but it's not chocolate. It's chocolate I get up front.
I do think it's dominated on the finish by this big roasty thing.
Yeah.
But there is something that's syrupy sweet in the middle of it that's kind of toffee or maybe vanilla to me. That's riding in the center. If the roast is holding the thing together, the vanilla is riding in the boat.
Yeah, I'm not getting vanilla. You may be.
I think maybe I'm talking myself into it because I get vanilla out of the Pumking.
I'm getting more of a toffee or caramel.
Yeah,
is what I'm.
And again, I may be talking myself into it.
But it's very subtle. There's not
far from perfect at doing this.
Yeah, it's not a stomach punch. It's a little.
Yeah.
And I had to think about it. I was like, "There's something else there," and I had to think about it.
To me, there's very little real sweetness in this. As soon as it hits my palate, it's all the. It's like I've taken a spoonful of Hershey's cocoa, the cocoa powder.
It's a dark bitter.
Yeah.
It's a bitter dark chocolate.
Yep.
Thing.
And it's almost overwhelming on my palate because there's so much of it, and I have to look for what's going on around the edges to try and find anything else in there. I get a little coffee. I get a little bit of bread crust or roastiness in there. And there is something syrupy sweet in the middle, and it's probably almost certainly more like toffee than it is like vanilla, but I think because I'm picturing Pumking in my head.
But the longer I go between sips, the more I can sense it. I just can't really put my finger on it.
See, I think I'm the opposite. The longer I go, the more that bitterness lingers with me, and if I take a sip, I get that syrupy sweetness.
No, I get it. It's hanging in there for me.
That's fun. I want to tell you a story about Pumking while we're drinking not Pumking.
Here we go.
It's
15 minutes.
It's about Southern Tier. We're going for 15. We're going long, Russ. It's not going to take long. So when I used to work at Barley's up there, when Southern Tier first came around, Barley's, we used to do, we would mix a beer, blend a beer every year to try and create an oatmeal cookie every fall.
Right.
And usually it was Cold Mountain and Highland oatmeal porter in some various amount of consistency. Whatever. One was more than the other. And so one year, Cold Mountain was so cherry, just miles and miles of cherry, that we couldn't make an oatmeal cookie with it.
Right.
And everybody was asking us when we were going to make an oatmeal cookie, and it was like, we don't have a beer for that. So one day, I'm sitting there sipping the creme brulee we were just talking about. I was like, we might be able to make an oatmeal cookie with this thing. What would we do with it? And we started talking, and I think Christian was the first one that said, we should mix this with Pumking. I went, oh, yeah, we should mix this with Pumking. So we mixed creme brulee and Pumking half and half. And I took a sip, and I was like, oh, that's super close. It's super close. It needs something. And we couldn't figure out what it was. And finally, I went, try a little splash of Dogfish Head 90 Minute. So 90-minute IPA on draft. And so we poured did a little splash. And I went, oh, we're really close. And it came out, what we ended up with was about 40% creme brulee, about 40% Pumking, and about 20% 90-minute IPA. And it tasted like a Little Debbie cream pie.
Really?
Like a 9% alcohol Little Debbie cream pie.
Who doesn't want that?
We had 3 sixtels. We had a half barrel of, I think, one of those. I think maybe we had a half barrel of creme brulee. We had 3 sixtels of the other stuff, and we went through every bit of that beer in a weekend. Because of how much people freaking fell in love with this Little Debbie cream pie of a beer.
If it's good, it's good.
Right?
It's good, it's good.
So blended beers do work, and that's why one of the reasons I just left it alone and assumed that this was a blended beer of some kind.
Yep. Well, for a mutt, I like it.
Works well.
So damn lucky. See you next time. I forgot to do that.